"Your sister's painting just sold for $10,000. My mom announced at breakfast, like she was reading the news. She turned to me with that look. "So, when are you finally going to do something with your art?" The words hit me like cold water. My brother dropped his spoon. My dad kept reading his newspaper, pretending he didn't hear anything. Even our dog stopped eating and looked up. I wasn't mad. I was done. I put down my orange juice, looked right at my mom, and said something I'd been holding inside for years. No tears, no shouting. What came out of my mouth wasn't mean. It wasn't even loud. But it made everyone see me differently from that moment on. My name is Rachel. I'm 33 years old. For most of my life, I was the kid who wasn't quite good enough yet. The one who needed more practice, more luck, more everything before anyone would notice me. From the outside, we seemed like a normal family. Nice apartment, fun birthday parties that looked perfect in pictures. A mom who always talked about how important family was. But inside our home, some people mattered more than others, and I learned where I stood pretty early. My sister Emma was 3 years older and everything seemed easy for her. Top grades without studying hard, tons of friends, art teachers said she was special. Mom showed off Emma's drawings like they were treasure. I was the quiet kid who built things with blocks in my room, the one whose school projects got a quick smile and nothing more. When my parents got divorced, Dad moved to another city. He called sometimes, mostly to ask about Emma's art shows. He loved us both, he said, but his questions were always about her. At meals, Emma's stories filled the whole table. Mine got a nod and then someone changed the subject. I worked after school since I was 16. Saved my money in a jar under my bed. Took jobs at coffee shops and bookstores so I could pay for the things I wanted to learn. I didn't tell everyone my plans because I'd figured out that talking about dreams too early meant someone would tell you why they wouldn't work. When I met Jason, I was tired of trying to prove I mattered. He was different. He was quiet and kind. He listened to my ideas without laughing or correcting me. He never asked when I'd catch up to Emma because he thought I was already doing great. We built a simple life together. An apartment that felt like home instead of a showroom. Slow Sunday mornings. Dinners where nobody compared us to anyone else. When we saved enough to buy our first place, it wasn't huge. It had big windows that let sunshine pour in, and a little balcony where we grew tomatoes and basil. We threw a party with friends who actually cared about us. People who knew my favorite color and remembered my birthday. I didn't tell my family about the party. Not because I wanted to hurt them. I just wanted one special thing that didn't feel like a test. But families notice when you stop including them. And when mine realized what happened, the questions started. Gentle at first, then sharper. Because in my world, winning only counted if everyone could watch you do it. And I was about to see how angry people get when you stop asking them to approve of your choices. The questions arrived disguised as concern. "So, what neighborhood did you end up in?" my mom asked one Sunday, her voice sweet like honey. "Oh, that place," she added before I could even answer, like she already knew it wasn't good enough. I kept my words short and simple. Outside the city, quiet street, nothing fancy. The less I said, the more uncomfortable she looked. Emma tried a different way. She sent long text messages late at night. Questions about the kitchen size, the backyard, if we were planning to redo the floors. Each question felt like she was measuring my life against hers. A month later I understood why. I bumped into Emma's husband Kevin at the grocery store. He looked worn out, like he hadn't slept in days. His shoulders drooped forward. His smile came too slow. When he talked about their house, his voice got quiet. "It's hard," he said carefully. "The payments keep coming. Things cost more than we thought they would." I didn't ask more questions. I didn't have to. The empty space after his words told me everything I needed to know. After that day, my mom's phone calls changed completely. She stopped asking about my apartment and started talking about pressure, about how difficult things were for Emma, about how real families help each other when times get tough. Then came the big ask. "You're doing okay now," she said to me. "Better than we thought you would, to be honest. Maybe you could chip in a little. Just until Emma gets back on her feet." Chip in meant give us money. Not advice, not a hug, not listening. Money. I sat at my desk after that call, looking at my bank statement. Numbers I'd earned by working late and skipping things I wanted. I remembered the years when I struggled alone. How nobody offered to help when I could barely afford food. How being successful suddenly made me important to them. When I said no thank you, everything changed. Mom didn't yell at first. She sounded sad and disappointed, like I'd let her down. Dad sent an email about being responsible for family. Emma didn't call for a week, then sent one sentence. I didn't think you'd act like this. That's when I stopped getting invited to things. No more casual lunches, no holiday plans, no updates unless they came with guilt attached to them. I was on the outside again. But this time it wasn't because I hadn't done enough. It was because I wouldn't fix problems I didn't create. One evening, sitting on our couch with Jason, I finally said what I was thinking. I think they only want me around when I'm useful to them. He didn't try to make me feel better right away. He just listened. Then the real question is, he said gently, how much space will you give to people who don't really see you? I didn't answer immediately. But something inside me had already shifted. For the first time ever, I wasn't wondering how to earn my spot in the family. I was wondering what would happen if I just stopped trying. The quiet from my family didn't explode like fireworks. Faded slowly. Text messages became rare. Group chats went silent. I'd see photos later posted online. Proof that dinners and celebrations were still happening. Just without me there. When Mom finally called again, she didn't say sorry. She explained instead. You're being too sensitive, she told me, like we were just having a small disagreement. Emma is going through so much right now. You should have been there for her. There for her. Those words sat between us like a trap with sharp teeth. I asked what being there looked like when I was working 2 jobs and going to school at night. When I bought my first car with money I saved myself. When I built my career quietly without anyone's help. She changed the topic fast. Dad texted me next. A really long message about family being forever. About how money disappears but relationships last. He didn't mention how fast relationships seemed to vanish when money wasn't on the table anymore. Emma called a few days later. Her voice was sharp and angry at first. Then it cracked. She talked about stress, about everyone expecting too much, about feeling embarrassed. Then she said something that broke my heart. I just thought you'd understand, she whispered. You always do. That was the exact moment everything inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a clean break in my chest like ice cracking. I realized they weren't asking me to help because they loved me. They were asking because I was easy. Because I'd learned to survive without making noise. Because I was supposed to absorb pain so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I hung up the phone and sat in my small office, staring out the window. Outside, cars drove past like always. Nothing had changed in the world except me. That night, I told Jason everything I'd been carrying inside. How exhausted I felt. How small I became around them. How every conversation left me awake at night. Replaying words, wondering what I should have said instead. He listened to all of it, then asked one simple question. What do you want your days to feel like? The answer came immediately. Not praise, not approval. Just calm. So I stopped defending myself. I stopped explaining my decisions. When messages came that tried to make me feel guilty, I answered with short, polite words. When invitations didn't arrive, I didn't ask why they forgot me. I filled my calendar with people who showed up without wanting something in return. It wasn't revenge or a plan. It was a line in the sand. And lines like that, I learned, don't need announcements. They just change what you'll accept. A few weeks later, Mom called with news. Emma's birthday dinner. A fancy restaurant. Just family, she said. I said yes before I could think too much about it. Not because I was ready to be welcomed back with open arms, but because I needed to see what would happen when I stopped playing the role they'd given me. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place Mom loved when she wanted things to look special. Soft lights, white tablecloths, shiny forks that reflected your face whether you wanted to see yourself or not. Emma was already sitting there when Jason and I walked in. She looked perfect in that way that takes hours of work. perfect hair, perfect makeup, the kind of perfect that looked tight, like it might shatter if she relaxed even a tiny bit. Mom hugged her first with a big smile. Dad went next. I stood there waiting my turn, wearing a polite smile that didn't reach my eyes at all. Dinner began the way it always did. Small talk, news that wasn't really news. Emma talked about her latest art commission. Mom filled in all the details Emma forgot to mention. Dad nodded when he was supposed to. Nobody asked how I was doing. I watched my mother cut her food slowly, enjoying every bite, savoring the moment. Then she smiled that familiar smile I'd seen a million times. "Your sister's housewarming party was so lovely," she said, like she was sharing a happy memory. "Everyone's still talking about how beautiful everything looked." Emma glanced up, looking pleased with herself. Dad made an approving sound. Then Mom turned her eyes to me. "So," she said lightly, tilting her head just a bit, "when are you going to catch up?" The words landed clean and sharp like an arrow. No anger in her voice, no blame. Just an assumption so deep she didn't even realize it was an insult. For 1 second, everything moved in slow motion. I heard the hum of other people talking at different tables. The sound of glasses clinking together. The weight of my fork in my hand. I thought about all the years I'd swallowed comments like this one. The times I'd laughed them off. The nights I went home and played them over and over in my head, wondering what was wrong with me. I set my fork down on the table. I didn't rush. I didn't smile to make it easier. "I hosted mine last year," I said in a calm voice. The entire table went still. Nobody spoke yet. Mom blinked several times, clearly confused. "Yours?" she asked. "What are you talking about?" I looked right at her. "My housewarming party. Jason and I had it last year." Emma frowned deeply. "You did?" "Yes," I answered. "It was a really wonderful night." Mom's confusion turned into something else. Maybe hurt, maybe shock. "Why didn't you tell us about it?" I took a slow breath, keeping myself steady. "You just weren't on the guest list." Her fork stopped moving, frozen halfway to her mouth. I didn't raise my voice or lean forward. I didn't make it softer either. Around the table, everyone reacted. Emma stopped drinking, her glass stuck in the air. Dad finally looked up from his phone, eyes wide open. The space between all of us filled with silence so thick you could almost touch it. "What do you mean we weren't invited?" Mom asked, her voice getting tight and high. "I mean exactly what I said," I replied calmly. "We had a housewarming party. We invited people who actually show up for us." Emma shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Rachel, maybe we should talk about this later." "No," I said gently, not looking at her. "I need to say this now." I turned back to Mom. "For 33 years," I continued, "you've made it very clear that my life only matters when it looks like Emma's life. When I had hard times, you said it was just part of growing up. When I did well quietly, it didn't count at all. And when I finally built something that made me truly happy, you didn't ask how it felt. You asked why you weren't there." Mom's eyes filled up with tears. "I love you," she said in a shaky voice. "You're my daughter." "I know you think you do," I said back. "But love isn't just being proud when something looks impressive from the outside. It's showing up when things don't look good." Dad cleared his throat loudly. "This seems unfair," he said. "Family members make exceptions for each other." "I've made exceptions my whole life," I replied. What I stopped doing was hurting myself to keep everyone else comfortable. Emma stared down at her plate. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't know you felt this way." I believed her when she said it. That didn't change anything though. "I'm not saying this is your fault," I told her. "We were just kids. You took the love that was offered. I would have done the same thing. But we're grown up now, and I'm finished pretending this is healthy for any of us." Mom shook her head back and forth. "You could have just told us how you felt." "I did," I said, "just not with words you wanted to hear. I told you by building a life that doesn't need your permission to exist." The silence stretched out long and uncomfortable. Somewhere in the restaurant, someone laughed out loud. Life kept moving around us like nothing was happening. I stood up slowly, reaching for my wallet to pay for my meal. "I'm not angry at any of you," I said, putting money on the table. I'm just done saying sorry for being myself. I turned to face Emma directly. Happy birthday. I really mean it when I say I hope you find what makes you happy. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. I didn't look back to see if Mom was crying or if Dad was trying to speak or if Emma had picked up her glass again. I already knew what I'd see there. A family shocked, not by my words themselves, but by the fact that I finally meant every single one of them. The aftermath didn't arrive all at once like a storm. It came in small pieces over time. Several days passed with no phone calls, no text messages, nothing. The silence felt different this time around. Not sharp and painful, not punishing, just empty. And for the first time in my life, that emptiness didn't scare me at all. Emma reached out first. Not to fight or accuse me, just a brief message saying she needed some time to think. I gave her that time. I'd learned that distance can sometimes be the kindest gift you can give someone. Over the next few months, little things started changing. Emma sold her big house and moved somewhere smaller that she could actually afford. Her social media posts changed too. Fewer perfect moments, more real ones. Books she was reading, walks in the park, a cat she rescued who seemed happy just to have a home. Mom tried reaching out once with a careful message. No apology in it, just an opening like a door cracked slightly. I didn't rush to respond. Jason and I returned to our normal rhythm. Morning coffee in our sunny kitchen. Evenings that ended peacefully without any tension. Friends who laughed easily and stayed late into the night. Our home felt lighter somehow, like it had been waiting for me to stop dragging old burdens through the front door. I didn't feel like I'd won some battle. I didn't feel guilty either. What I felt was solid ground under my feet. Sometimes I still think about that night at the fancy restaurant. About the fork frozen in midair. About the silence that followed my words. That silence didn't destroy my family. It just showed me exactly where I stood when I finally chose to put myself first. For the longest time, I thought love meant trying harder, being quieter, proving over and over that I deserved a place at the table. I was completely wrong about that. Love doesn't ask you to disappear so other people can feel comfortable around you. Success doesn't need an audience watching to be real and meaningful. If this story felt familiar to you, if you've ever been compared to someone else, overlooked and forgotten, or made to feel like you were always running behind everyone, you're not alone in feeling that way. You're not late to anything. You're not missing something important. You're just finished running a race that someone else designed for you. If this touched your heart, share your own story in the comments below and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what comes next on Flex Revenge Unfold.